Hotel staff mock poor guest until they learn who he is. The old, battered suitcase thumped onto the polished marble floor of the Grand Imperial Hotel's lobby, the sound echoing through the cavernous space like a discordant note in a symphony. Dust motes danced in the sunbeams that streamed through the massive, arched windows, illuminating the sheer extravagance of the place. Chandeliers, each a constellation of glittering crystals, hung like frozen waterfalls from the high, ornate ceiling. A man, seemingly out of place amidst the opulent surroundings, stood beside the suitcase. His clothes were simple, almost worn, a faded denim jacket, a plain gray t-shirt, and well-worn jeans. He had a weathered face, etched with lines that spoke of hard work and long hours. His eyes, however, held a sharp intelligence that belied his humble appearance. This was Daniel Hayes, and he was about to check in. The air in the lobby hummed with a hushed, almost reverent, quality. Wealthy patrons, draped in designer clothes and radiating an air of effortless sophistication, glided across the marble floors, their voices a low murmur of privilege. Daniel watched them, his expression unreadable. He approached the reception desk, where two young women with perfectly coiffed hair and impeccably applied makeup stood chatting. As he neared, their conversation abruptly ceased. They turned towards him, their smiles vanishing like mirages in the desert. The receptionist on the left, a petite blonde with an air of disdain, raised a perfectly sculpted eyebrow. "May I help you?" she asked, her tone suggesting that she highly doubted she could. Daniel nodded. "I have a reservation. The name is Hayes." The blonde tapped at her computer, her fingers moving with a slow, deliberate lack of enthusiasm. A flicker of something, annoyance, perhaps, crossed her face as she scrolled through the screen. Hayes. Hayes. I don't seem to find it. Are you sure you have the right hotel? Her tone dripped with condescension. Daniel remained calm, his gaze steady. Yes, I'm sure. Hayes. Daniel Hayes. It was booked several weeks ago. The other receptionist, a brunette with a sharp, angular face, leaned in, her eyes scanning Daniel from head to toe. Her lips curled into a barely perceptible sneer. Perhaps there's been a mistake. These things happen. Daniel noticed the subtle shift in their demeanor, the way they dismissed him based solely on his appearance. He couldn't shake the feeling that something was deeply amiss. Was this just standard inefficiency, or was something more sinister at play? Why did the warmth extended to other patrons seem entirely absent when directed at him? This was the Grand Imperial, renowned for its impeccable service. What was going on? Daniel Hayes wasn't just any guest. He was the owner of the Grand Imperial Hotel chain, a fact unknown to the two receptionists currently treating him with such disdain. He had built his empire from the ground up, starting with a small, family-run motel and transforming it into a globally recognized luxury brand. He believed in hard work, honesty, and treating everyone with respect, regardless of their background or appearance. He was undercover at the Grand Imperial, the flagship hotel of his empire, because of a disturbing trend he'd noticed in recent customer reviews. Complaints about preferential treatment, dismissive staff, and an overall decline in service were becoming increasingly common. He couldn't ignore it. He needed to see for himself what was happening. His company, Hayes Hospitality Group, was his life's work. He had poured his heart and soul into building a brand synonymous with quality and exceptional service. The thought that his legacy was being tarnished by the actions of a few prejudiced employees filled him with a burning resolve to uncover the truth and rectify the situation. He entrusted the daily running of his empire to a trusted board of directors, while he enjoyed stepping back to enjoy the fruits of his labor. Usually. Right now, though, he had a job to do. Sarah, the blonde receptionist, was known for her sharp tongue and her tendency to judge people based on their attire and perceived wealth. She believed that the Grand Imperial was a sanctuary for the elite, and she took it upon herself to filter out those she deemed unworthy. Emily, the brunette, was equally judgmental, often siding with Sarah and reinforcing her biased views. Their manager, Mr. Harrison, was aware of their behavior but often turned a blind eye. He was more concerned with maintaining the hotel's reputation than addressing the underlying issues of discrimination and unfair treatment. He operated on the misguided principle that catering to the wealthy elite was the key to success, even if it meant alienating other guests. This was the culture Daniel had unknowingly fostered, or rather, allowed to fester. Daniel had deliberately dressed down for this mission, wanting to experience the hotel as an average guest. He wanted to see if the complaints were justified, and he wanted to understand why his employees were behaving in such a way. He knew that his reputation, and the future of his company, rested on his ability to address this issue effectively. His own success was rooted in understanding people, and he felt like he no longer understood his own company. As Daniel stood at the desk, patiently waiting for Sarah to find his reservation, a family of 4 approached the reception. They were impeccably dressed, their luggage designer-branded, and their faces radiating wealth. Sarah's face lit up as she spotted them. "Good morning, Mr. and Mrs. Thompson. Welcome back to the Grand Imperial. It's always a pleasure to see you," she gushed, completely ignoring Daniel. Emily chimed in, her voice dripping with syrupy sweetness. "We have your usual suite ready for you, with a complimentary bottle of champagne waiting in your room." The Thompsons beamed, their eyes crinkling with pleasure. "Thank you, ladies. You always make us feel so welcome." Daniel watched the interaction, his jaw tightening slightly. The contrast between the warm welcome extended to the Thompsons and the dismissive treatment he was receiving was stark and undeniable. He cleared his throat, hoping to regain Sarah's attention. "Excuse me," he said politely. "I believe I was here first." Sarah sighed dramatically, as if Daniel had committed a grave offense. "Just a moment, sir. I'm dealing with a priority guest." Daniel's blood began to boil. He understood the importance of customer service, but this was blatant discrimination. He watched as Sarah and Emily meticulously checked in the Thompsons, showering them with attention and ensuring their every need was met. Meanwhile, he remained standing there, forgotten and ignored. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, Sarah turned back to him, her expression still frosty. "All right, Mr. Hayes. I've found your reservation. But there seems to be a problem. Your room isn't ready yet. We're experiencing a slight delay." Daniel knew that this was a lie. He had checked the hotel's occupancy rates online before arriving. The hotel was far from full, and there were plenty of rooms available. This was deliberate. They were deliberately delaying his check-in because they didn't like the way he looked. He took a deep breath, trying to control his anger. He could have revealed his true identity right then and there, but he knew that wouldn't solve anything. He needed to gather more evidence to understand the full extent of the problem. He decided to escalate his investigation, to delve deeper into the hotel's culture and expose the truth. He said, "I understand. How long will the delay be?" "Possibly a few hours," Sarah replied with a shrug. "You're welcome to wait in the lobby." Daniel decided to make the most of the delay. He sat down in a comfortable armchair in the lobby, observing the staff and their interactions with other guests. He overheard snippets of conversations, revealing a disturbing pattern of judgment and prejudice. He heard Sarah and Emily gossiping about him in hushed tones, referring to him as some kind of wannabe and a cheapskate who couldn't afford a real hotel. He winced, his heart sinking at their words. Later, he approached the hotel's concierge, hoping to get some information about local attractions. The concierge, a tall, impeccably dressed man named Mr. Davies, barely glanced at him. He answered Daniel's questions with curt, dismissive responses, clearly uninterested in providing any real assistance. As the hours passed, Daniel experienced more and more instances of mistreatment. He tried to order a coffee at the hotel's cafe, but the waitress, a young woman with a bored expression, took her time serving him, prioritizing other customers who looked more affluent. When he finally received his coffee, it was cold and bitter. However, amidst the negativity, Daniel encountered a glimmer of hope. He met Maria, a young housekeeper who was cleaning the lobby. Maria was friendly and polite, offering him a warm smile and engaging in genuine conversation. She seemed genuinely surprised by the behavior of the other staff members, expressing her apologies for their rudeness. "I don't understand why they treat people like that," she said, her voice filled with sincerity. "It's not right. Everyone deserves to be treated with respect." Daniel saw in Maria a reflection of the values he had always strived to instill in his employees. She was a reminder that not everyone in the hotel had succumbed to the culture of prejudice. He realized that he needed to protect employees like Maria and weed out those who were tarnishing the hotel's reputation. Daniel deliberately prolonged his stay in the lobby, wanting to witness as much as possible. He observed the staff making condescending remarks about other guests, judging them based on their appearance, their accents, and their social status. He heard them boasting about how they could spot a fake from a mile away, and how they enjoyed making those guests feel uncomfortable. The tension inside Daniel built with each passing hour. He was ready to confront them, to expose their behavior and demand change. But he knew that he needed solid proof, evidence that he could present to Mr. Harrison and the board of directors. He excused himself and walked outside, pulling out his phone. He called his trusted assistant, Lisa, and explained the situation. "Lisa, I need you to gather all the customer complaints from the past 6 months, focusing on those that mention preferential treatment or rude staff," he said. "And I need you to send me copies of the hotel's internal training manuals, particularly those related to customer service and diversity." He hung up, his resolve hardening. He wouldn't let his hotel be defined by prejudice and discrimination. He was determined to restore the Grand Imperial to its former glory, a place where everyone was treated with respect and dignity. The time for confrontation was drawing near. Finally, after several hours of enduring dismissive treatment and blatant disrespect, Daniel decided that he had enough evidence. He stood up, his shoulders squared, and walked back towards the reception desk. Sarah and Emily were once again engrossed in conversation, barely acknowledging his presence. He cleared his throat loudly, forcing them to turn towards him. "Excuse me," he said, his voice calm but firm. "I believe there's been a misunderstanding." Sarah rolled her eyes. "What is it now?" Daniel took a deep breath and looked directly at Sarah, his gaze unwavering. "You seem to have mistaken me for just another guest. Someone you can dismiss and ignore based on their appearance." Emily snickered. "Well, aren't you?" Daniel smiled, a slow, deliberate smile that sent a shiver down their spines. "Actually," he said, "I'm Daniel Hayes." The color drained from their faces. Sarah's jaw dropped, and Emily's eyes widened in disbelief. They stared at him, speechless, their earlier arrogance replaced with a mixture of fear and panic. "Daniel Hayes?" Sarah stammered. The owner?" Daniel nodded. "That's right. And I've been observing your behavior for the past few hours. I've seen how you treat guests based on their appearance, how you prioritize those you deem worthy and dismiss those you don't." He paused, letting his words sink in. "I'm deeply disappointed. The Grand Imperial is supposed to be a place of exceptional service, where everyone is treated with respect and dignity. Your actions have tarnished that reputation." Sarah and Emily began to stammer excuses, their voices trembling. "Mr. Hayes, we didn't know, we thought." Daniel raised his hand, silencing them. "It doesn't matter what you thought. What matters is what you did. And what you did was unacceptable." He turned to address the entire lobby, his voice resonating through the space. "I want everyone to know that I do not condone this kind of behavior. The Grand Imperial will not tolerate prejudice or discrimination of any kind. From now on, things are going to change." He fixed Sarah and Emily with a stern look. "Effective immediately, you are both suspended without pay. You will undergo mandatory sensitivity training, and your future employment with this hotel will depend on your willingness to change your behavior and embrace the values of fairness and respect." The aftermath of Daniel's revelation was swift and decisive. Mr. Harrison, the hotel manager, was summoned to the lobby, his face pale with shock and embarrassment. Daniel reprimanded him for failing to address the issues of discrimination and for allowing a toxic culture to fester within the hotel. He ordered a complete overhaul of the hotel's training programs, emphasizing the importance of diversity, inclusion, and ethical behavior. He implemented a zero-tolerance policy for discrimination, making it clear that any employee found guilty of such behavior would face immediate termination. In the days that followed, the Grand Imperial underwent a significant transformation. The staff, shaken by Daniel's actions, began to reevaluate their behavior and embrace a more inclusive and respectful approach to customer service. Sarah and Emily, humbled by their suspension and forced to confront their own biases, underwent sensitivity training and began to understand the impact of their actions. They eventually apologized to Daniel and expressed their willingness to learn and grow. He, in turn, gave them a second chance, but made it clear that they would be closely monitored. Daniel also made sure to recognize and reward employees who had demonstrated a commitment to fairness and respect. He promoted Maria, the kind housekeeper, to a supervisory role, recognizing her genuine compassion and her dedication to treating everyone with dignity. He spent several weeks at the Grand Imperial, working alongside his employees, listening to their concerns, and fostering a culture of open communication and mutual respect. He implemented new feedback mechanisms, allowing guests to anonymously report instances of discrimination or unfair treatment. As he prepared to leave the hotel, Daniel reflected on the experience. He had been deeply disappointed by the behavior of some of his employees, but he had also been inspired by the resilience and compassion of others. He realized that true leadership wasn't about wielding power or instilling fear, but about fostering a culture of fairness, empathy, and mutual respect. He gathered the staff together for one final meeting. "I want to thank you all for your hard work and your commitment to making the Grand Imperial a better place," he said. "I know that we've had some challenges, but I believe that we've emerged stronger and more united." He paused, his eyes scanning the faces of his employees. "Remember," he said, "the true measure of our success is not the wealth of our guests, but the way we treat each other. Let us always strive to be kind, compassionate, and respectful to everyone, regardless of their background or appearance." Daniel left the Grand Imperial with a renewed sense of purpose. He knew that the fight against prejudice and discrimination was an ongoing battle, but he was confident that he had laid the foundation for a more inclusive and equitable future for his company. He returned to his office and instructed Lisa to create a company-wide campaign promoting equality and respect. He also decided to change the company's mission statement to reflect these values. The Grand Imperial, once tarnished by prejudice, was now a beacon of fairness and equality, a testament to the power of leadership and the importance of treating everyone with dignity. Have you ever been judged or mistreated based on your appearance? How did you handle the situation? Share your experiences in the comments below.